You stand in Skopje, autumn, 1392. The smoke from burned timbers stings your throat. The town has fallen. The men who fought lie silent. The danger now turns to their wives, to you. The soldiers form lines. Officers count captives. Scribes dip pens. They take names, ages, and origins. They ask who can sew, who can read, who has children. You cannot see your neighbor's face for the dust. You hear a chain scrape a cart's plank. The questions do not stop. Time runs against you. A clerk explains nothing. Two riders read a short order. Some women go right. Some go left. No one tells you why. The rules are not spoken to the prisoners. You search for your sister. You count doorways, corners, and shields. You count the breaths until your turn. One list means the road. The other list means the court. A junior officer points at a group of older women. They push them toward a side street. You hear the word for resettlement. It sounds like exile. You see children pulled along that path as well. The guards say the capital needs people for new quarters. They say houses wait in empty wards. Your aunt whispers of deportations after every conquest. You ask where the road ends. No one answers. The column starts to move. Some captives will be resettled by state order. A pale-dressed steward walks the second line. He looks for youth and health. He marks wrists with charcoal. Those who bear his mark do not join the road column. They wait under a separate banner. Two palace men arrive with sealed notes. They speak softly to the officer. He nods and waves their banner forward. The marked women will not see home again. You swallow hard. Some captives will go to the palace and its schools. The sun dips. Torches flare. You hear buyers murmur near a square. A few elders talk of ransom. They say gold can buy returns. They say neighbors once paid and brought daughters back. Tonight the murmurs feel thin. The guards walk faster. Prices and pleas do not agree. You tug your sleeve free and step back into line. This choice will not be yours. A whisper passes down the row. One woman says the state takes a portion of all captives. She says this share is fixed and old. She does not know the number. She only knows the officer's bag will open for that share first. You look at the marked forearms. You look at the road column. You try to count the missing. How much is set aside and by what law? A second whisper follows. A merchant claims the palace collects some women to serve behind locked doors. He says the lucky ones end up as attendants and learn to read and to stitch silk. He says others become consorts if ranked women choose them. He says a new name and a new faith erase the past. He does not say what happens to those who fail their training. He bites his lip and looks away. What happens to a life once the name is changed? Time jumps. An hour passes. Night deepens. The first two carts leave for the road east. A third cart waits under guards in richer uniforms. You see better shoes. You see fine belts. You see the steward again. He speaks with the clerk at the center table. He touches 3 names with his finger. The clerk nods. He lifts his hand. You feel your stomach drop. The clerk calls a village. He calls a father's name. He calls a wife. The steward raises 2 fingers. The guards step toward your row. Your neighbor squeezes your palm. You hear your own breath. The steward scans faces, one by one. He stops. He speaks your name. Will you step forward or run? You do not run. You step forward. The steward touches your wrist. The charcoal leaves a black mark. Leather straps creak near your ear. A guard smells of horse sweat and smoke. He turns you toward the center table. The clerk repeats your name and your village. He asks if you can read. He asks if you can sew. You answer in short words. He does not look up. The steward checks your hands. He notes no scars from heavy labor. He looks at your teeth. He nods once. He points to the banner with better shoes. Your neighbor grips your sleeve. You slip free. The guards move you between 2 carts and into a side street. Torches flare. A boy runs with a bucket. The steward raises 2 fingers. The group, under the richer banner, starts to move. Later that night, you sit in a house with boarded windows. A soldier bolts the door. You hear writing from the room next to you. You hear the hinge squeal each time the clerk passes. A woman sobs behind her shawl. You count the squeals. You stop at 30. A tray comes in with water and flatbread. The steward says one word you do not know. You repeat it in your head until sleep breaks it into parts. The list decides your future. She was 16. The steward's word had been Pensik. In the Ottoman system, 1 in 5 captives passed to the Sultan's share by law. The clerks recorded that share first. Then they divided the rest for ransom, sale, or resettlement under Surgan orders. The rule served the palace and the army. It also fed the schools that made servants for court and households across the realm. A 5th share goes to the Sultan. At dawn, they marched the marked group to the river road. The town lay behind them. Smoke rose in narrow columns. She kept her head down. A guard read names every hour. He checked the charcoal mark on each wrist. He added a red thread for those chosen by palace men. She wore that thread. The others did not speak to her. They watched the same horizon and walked. 3 weeks later, Edirne. The wooden gates showed deep knife cuts from old drills. The intake hall smelled of lime and soap. Scribble boards leaned against a wall. The women entered in pairs. The clerk asked each for name, origin, and age. He wrote a new name on a second line. He left a space for faith. Most received the same word in that space. They did not argue. They knew canon law from home. Here it held no force. Training changes more than duties. The palace intake had 2 streams. The stronger and older went to outer service. Kitchens, laundries, stables. The young and steady-eyed went to inner service. Lessons, sewing, language drills. A few, after years and manumission, could be matched into ranked marriages. The highest path led to consort status under the Valid's eye. No one said this aloud to the new group. The rules lived in doors and keys. Back to the intake hall. The steward who marked her in Skopje stood by the registrar. He handed over a sealed note. The registrar broke the wax and read twice. He lifted his gaze. He measured her shoulders and height. He glanced at her hands again. He made a small sign to the chamberlain. The chamberlain wrote a symbol she did not know beside her new name. A sealed note holds her fate. The chamberlain led 10 into a side corridor. He stopped the rest. He told a guard to take the larger group to the outer wards. The 10 waited in a narrow room with a copper basin. An elderly woman brought shears and a folded bundle. She spoke softly and asked about fevers. She looked at the red thread on each wrist. She smiled without warmth. The palace keeps strict records. Foreshadow ran quiet in the corridor. The steward had not chosen only for youth. He had orders tied to known households in the conquered town. The registrar kept a list of men by rank and land grant. Wives and widows of those men could be used to settle debts, end blood feuds, or bind new Timar holders by family ties. No one told the 10 this. The symbol on the page told it to the staff. She watched the shears in the elderly woman's hand. The woman pointed to a bench. The chamberlain called her new name. He opened a second door. Beyond it, other voices fell silent at once. He said, "This one goes to the inner school." But not for the usual course. What did that second order demand? Second order. The chamberlain led her into a small room with a copper basin. 2 attendants washed her hair and hands. An older woman cut a small lock and burned it in a clay cup. A scribe stood in the doorway and wrote her new name. He left her old one on the top line and drew a line through it. The chamberlain said the second order placed her in a transfer school. Not the usual course. It prepared girls for households outside the palace. The second order changed the door she would pass. They dressed her in plain blue linen. A younger attendant taught the first Turkish words for water, bread, needle, and door. The intake physician checked her skin and eyes. He marked a tablet with chalk. He spoke to the chamberlain in a low voice. She heard the words for fever, teeth, and strength. The chamberlain nodded and left. The old woman with the shears took her hand and led her to a bench in a narrow dormitory. Another test waits behind the next door. In Adirna, the women's inner school taught sewing, cleaning, and service. It also taught language, gesture, and silence. The rules were printed in deeds and keys, not in spoken lessons. A girl advanced by steadiness. A mistake sent her to laundry halls. A steady year could move her to the apartments of higher officers. A few, with rank and luck, reached the Sultan's household and later left as freed women to marry men of standing. The rest went out by assignment to timar holders and officials across the provinces. Promotion follows quiet steps. 3 weeks later, spring drills in the inner ward. She stood with 9 others from the transfer school. A matron tapped their shoulders with a thin stick. Turn, sit, stand, bow. She corrected each movement with 2 words only. A chamberlain watched from the doorway with 2 sealed notes. The girls repeated a list of titles until they could attach each to a greeting. The matron changed their headscarves and checked their stitches. Someone would open one of those notes. Back to the transfer school. The symbol beside her name matched a list of lands around Skopje. The registrar kept column headings for district, fief, and holder. The new holder was a sipahi with a fresh grant under the timar system. He had taken the fields of her late husband's lord. The court wanted the district quiet. It needed grain sent north and taxes sent east. Gifts to that new holder were cheaper than garrisons. One gift could bind a village. The chamberlain read both notes. One ordered a test in piety and language. The other ordered transfer to a specific household if she passed. The matron drilled the girls in prayer and simple law. The conversion had been formal the first day. Now, the lessons shaped practice. She learned how to answer to her new name. She learned the terms for service contracts and manumission. She heard the rules for a concubine who bore a child. She listened without change in her face. Time moved in set drills. Orders exist long before the girl arrives. A messenger brought a small bundle to the school. It held bracelets of copper and glass. The matron measured each wrist. She set aside the finest piece. She placed it in a wooden box with a tag. She wrote the new name on the tag in a steady hand. The chamberlain sealed the box again. He said the household expected the delivery in 2 days. The matron's face did not change. The decision had been made elsewhere. At night, the dormitory fell silent. One girl wept into her blanket. Another whispered that ransom still arrived for a cousin in a different ward. The matron did not punish the whisper. She only said that ransom required a purse, a route, and a signature. The purse rarely matched the route. The signature rarely reached the right table on time. She told them to sleep. They obeyed. Ransom stories fade when seals appear. Morning. Inspection. The chamberlain called her new name first. He checked her posture and stitches. He asked for a prayer line. She recited it. He asked for the word for door, needle, and water. She gave each at once. He nodded. He passed the sealed note to the matron. The matron read it and folded it under her belt. The old woman with the shears placed the wooden box in the girl's hands. The route left the palace that same hour. The cart does not return the same way. The cart crossed the river and turned south toward the timar villages. A steward rode ahead with the papers. The scribe rode behind with the register. They reached a stone house near fields of winter barley. The new holder stood in the doorway with 2 elders. He bowed to the steward. He held out a key and a bolt of cloth. He gave the steward each in turn. The elders watched without words. The second order now stood in the yard. The steward read the terms. The girl would serve in the inner rooms. She would be taught the household's rights. After a trial period, the holder could take her as a concubine under law. If she bore a son, she would gain protections. The elders signed the page. The steward sealed it. The scribe wrote the date. The girl stood with the wooden box in her hands and did not move. A signature can end a feud. Then the steward read the last line. The household was the same man who now held her late husband's lands. The court meant to end the clan's claim by joining her womb to the new grant. She understood at once. The symbol beside her name had not meant the palace. It had meant this yard, this door, and this man. She looked up. The holder's eyes did not waver. What would the first knight demand? The steward left the yard. The holder's mother stepped forward. She took the girl's wooden box. She checked the bracelet and the cloth. She called for water. 2 servants brought a basin and soap. They washed the road dust from the girl's hands and hair. The mother spoke evenly. She said the house would keep the law. She said no man would touch the girl until the court marked the start of service. Rules decide the first night. The next morning they walked to the Kuta's court. The clerk read the papers from Edirne. He wrote the new name and the place of capture. He asked one question on faith. He wrote the answer without pause. He said one term in Arabic, istibra, a waiting period. One clear cycle to prove the womb was empty. The holder nodded. The clerk added the date of the last bleeding. He drew a line on a board to mark the count. A waiting period hides another fear. Back to the house. The women gave the girl a small room near the inner door. They handed her a list of tasks. She must learn the keys. She must learn the storage jars. She must learn the names of guests and their greetings. The mother tested her speech at dusk. The girl used short Turkish words from the palace school. She made no errors. The mother showed no praise. She only pointed to the prayer corner and left. 10 days later, the first inspection. The Kuta's bailiff came with 2 elders. He checked the record board. He spoke to the mother, not to the girl. He warned against hidden visits. He warned against night doors. The mother signed the note with a thumbprint. The bailiff sealed the paper and returned to town. The elders watched the seal dry. They said nothing. The state wants sons. The girl watched the yard change. Laborers repaired a corner wall. A cart brought seed for spring fields. Men came with receipts tied to Timar dues. The holder measured grain and sent it on. He looked once toward the inner door and then away. The mother kept the routine strict. The household women taught stitching patterns used for dowry cloths, though the girl had no dowry. They drilled her in the rules for servants, for guests, and for a concubine. The mother named each rule. A concubine did not need a marriage contract. No mar. No guardian. Law allowed the master to approach her after istibra. If she bore a child, she gained a new status. Walad. She could not be sold. She would be freed at his death. If he wished to marry her by nikah, he must first manumit her, and then pay a mar. The mother said these words without warmth. She wanted the house quiet. One child could turn a captive into kin. 3 weeks later, the clan women came. They were widows and sisters from the old lord's house. They stood in the yard and stared at the girl. No one spoke her old name. The mother met them at the threshold. She showed the seals. She showed the court record. She showed the transfers of field rights. The women did not argue. One spat on the ground and left. The others followed her out. The mother watched until the lane cleared. A quiet house saves lives. Back to the court. The bailiff checked the board again. The waiting period had ended. He asked the girl one direct question. Last bleeding. She answered. He wrote the date and closed the file. He told the holder he could proceed under law. He warned that harm without cause would bring a fine. He warned that any child must be recorded within 7 days. He left his seal on the doorpost and rode away. The seal turns keys into orders. Night fell. The mother sent 2 servants to the outer rooms. She brought the girl a plain dress and a scarf. She spoke one sentence. You will do your duty. She placed a small bowl of sugared almonds on the table. She set a lamp by the bed. She left and closed the door. The house fell still. The girl listened to her own breath. She looked at the seal on the doorpost through the open lattice. Footsteps came down the corridor. The latch moved. Who would cross the threshold first? The latch lifted. The holder stepped inside. The lamp burned low. Oil smelled sharp. The girl stood by the bed with the scarf in her hands. The bowl of sugared almonds waited on the table. The seal on the doorpost caught a line of light. The holder closed the door with care. He looked at the seal. He looked at her face. He said her new name. Back to the chamber. The house was silent. The floor felt cold under her bare feet. She set the scarf on the chest. She did not step back. He stopped an arm's length away. He said one sentence. "The court has given leave." She nodded. Her hands did not shake. She placed the scarf on her head and tied it tight. She drew one breath. No witness stands between them. He spoke again. He said he would keep the law. He said harm would fall on him if he broke it. He did not raise his voice. He named the bailiff. He named the day. He repeated the order for a child's record within 7 days if needed. He looked again at the seal. He did not move closer. He waited for her to speak. She chose her words with care. She said she would do her duty. She said the mother had taught her the rules. She said she would keep silence before guests. She asked only one thing. If a child came, the record must be made on the first market day. No delay. No missing clerk. No ruined ink. She stared at the bowl of almonds and then back to him. "The lamp will not hide the choice." He nodded once. He said he would write the note himself if the scribe failed. He said the Khada knew his hand. He took the scarf's edge in his fingers and loosened it. He set it on the chest. He placed one almond in her palm. She closed her hand around it. The sugar stuck to her skin. Her mouth was dry. She swallowed and could not taste it. Back to the chamber. The mother had stripped the room of all display. No dowry cloths, no painted plate. The bed was plain. The lamp hissed once. The girl stood still. She remembered the matron's drill. Turn, sit, stand, bow. She did none of those. She raised her chin. She spoke the new name again, so he would not use the old. He inclined his head. He did not step past her until she said yes. Time moved without sound. He placed the almonds back on the table. He set his belt on the chest. He did not touch the lamp. He spoke a last line. If she bore a child, he would bring the mother to the court to witness the record. He would sign in the mother's presence. He would not send a servant. He finished the words. He waited. The girl breathed out. She moved one step toward the bed. A door can erase a life in a step. He reached past her and pinched the lamp's stem to lower the flame. He did not snuff it. Light still circled the room. He touched her sleeve. She did not pull away. She set her palm on his wrist. Her hand felt rough from travel and soap. His skin was warm. He did not push. He waited again. She nodded. He let out the breath he had held. Back to the chamber. She remembered Skopje, the dust, the mark on her wrist, the red thread. She remembered the cart and the sealed note. She remembered the mother's even voice. She looked once at the door. The seal shone in the dim light. She looked back at him. She did not think of the fields. She did not think of the old house. She thought only of the record and the name that would be written if a child came. The night leaves no second copy. He lifted the blanket. She stepped forward. The lamp guttered once and steadied. The room held its breath. He reached to darken the flame. She caught his hand. "Swear on the seal," she said. He paused. Would he speak the oath she demanded, or would the flame die before the words left his mouth? He swore on the seal. He said the oath in a steady voice. He named the Khada and the day. He promised the record within 7 days of any birth. She let go of his hand. He lowered the lamp. The house held its silence. Morning came with the smell of ash and bread. The mother opened the door and checked the wick. No one spoke of the oath. No one had to. The oath binds more than a night. 7 days later, market day. He bought ink and a new reed pen. He spoke with a court scribe about ledgers and winter dues. He said nothing about the inner rooms. He did not need to. The scribe saw the new pen and understood. The mother walked home ahead of him. She counted cloth, oil, and grain. The girl kept the keys and wrote numbers on a wax tablet. Back to the house, weeks turned. The mother watched the calendar board. She asked no questions. She only noted dates. One morning, the girl stood in the doorway and did not move. The mother saw her face and sent for the midwife. The midwife came with a small case. She asked 3 questions and nodded. She drank water and left a list of foods for the next weeks. Pregnancy shifts the balance of the house. 2 months later, the bailiff returned. He checked tax sacks and field notes. He greeted the women. He heard the news without surprise. He told the holder to prepare the birth record form. He named the fine for delay. He reminded the mother that walad could not be sold. He spoke the term and watched the girl's face. She showed no change. She only held the key ring tighter. The mother changed the drills. The girl rested in the hottest hours. She learned the store accounts and the measures of grain. She spoke to the miller by name. She sent a bolt of cloth to the imam's wife. She sent a small purse to a widow from the old clan. The widow took it and left without words. The lane stayed quiet. A name on a cradle silences old claims. 9 months later, late summer, the midwife came at dusk. The house sang prayers under breath. The holder waited in the outer room. The mother kept count by the door. Near dawn, a child cried. The midwife wrapped the boy and nodded. The mother sent a servant at once. The holder and the girl met in the courtyard with the seal on the doorpost. He took the boy in both hands. He spoke the chosen name. He kissed the seal. He placed the boy in the cradle. Back to the court. The record was made on the first market day. The holder signed with the new pen. The mother touched the line with her thumb. The cutter wrote walad in the margin. He named the fine again in case of sale. He closed the book. The bailiff sealed a copy and handed it to the mother. She put it in the chest under the prayer cloth. The child changes the map of the yard. 3 years later, a fever took the holder's brother. The clan tried no claim. The records stood in the way. The boy learned letters on a board by the door. The girl taught him to count dates on a string. She ran the storehouse. She chose 2 apprentices for the loom. She sent food to the widow on Fridays. The mother grew thin and smiled twice a year. She called the girl by her new name only. A freedwoman remembers the first seal. 5 winters later, the holder fell ill after a journey. He settled accounts and called the scribe. He named guardians for the boy. He manumitted the girl in a clear hand. He died before spring. The court read the paper and stamped the seal. She stood with the boy and the mother. She did not cry. She held the key ring and the chess copy. She sent for the imam and the elders. The lane stayed quiet. She had a choice. She could marry a local man of rank. She could remain as guardian in the house. She chose the second path. She hired a tutor for the boy. She arranged the taxes in full and early. The Qadi said the district kept the cleanest books in his court. The clan women did not come to the yard again, back to the chest. She opened it on the boy's 7th birthday. She showed him the record of his name. She showed him the first reed pen. She told him the rule for promise and seal. She said the oath had held the house together. He traced the seal with 1 finger. He put the pen back in the box. Now you stand in that yard, years later. You touch the dry seal and feel its rough edge. You hear the boy read his letters under the lintel. You smell ash and bread in the morning air. You know why the oath mattered that first night, and why the record mattered on the first market day. The law did not ease the wound. It did give her a path. Records outlast swords. If you want more measured stories like this, medieval queens, canon law, and the quiet rooms where choices fix a realm, ask for the next chapter.